Fastest show in sports.
This is an individual who had everything going for him in a major sport in America, but then because of one instance, fell from grace.
Milan Lucic is the sum of an age-old hockey equation. Size plus aggression equals intimidation.
He's a frightening object, right? He's a frightening stature. He's just this big hulk of a guy.
He walks around and he's just physically imposing.
His style was a perfect fit with the town in which he plied his trade for 8 seasons.
When I got there, it was a perfect match. And I think it was that just because of the identity of the city and what they expect from their athletes. And it's those guys before me that already built that identity. And, it just happened to be the type of style that I played.
His rambunctious style of play reminded Bruins fans of a generation gone by.
He was probably the most popular athlete, certainly amongst the most popular athletes in Boston. And again, it goes back to the identity of what the Bruins want to be, and I think he personified that.
Milan Lucic was one of those players with the Boston Bruins for 8 seasons where they loved him. He was tough, he was physical, he was that guy. There are many people who still had him tabbed for stardom. He won a Stanley Cup with the Bruins. He left and then came back to the Bruins later in his career recently. He took an injury which basically put him out for the season, but then while he was out injured, there came the allegations that he beat his wife. The cops came in, they arrested him. Lucic basically was released from the Bruins, and he has now caught on with the St. Louis Blues. And people in St. Louis, some of them, Mike, are up in arms. How dare you bring this guy in? A woman beater? He beat his wife? But let's temper that by saying that when this case went to trial, went to court, his wife didn't testify against him. The two of them worked on it. They worked it out. Now, granted, there's nothing more heinous than being somebody who beats a woman. I get that. We don't know all the sordid details. The police know. The Lucics know. We don't. But the issue comes down here, Mike. Here's a guy who's talented, who's really good at his job. This comes back to some of the other conversations we've had. He's trying to get back in the National Hockey League. He has made amends with his wife. They are still together. And another team is giving him a chance. You and I both know that there's going to be people the first time that Lucic takes the ice. There are people who are going to applaud and say, look at the great guy we got. Look at this. Here's a Stanley Cup champion. But there's also going to be a part there who will say, that guy beat his wife. We don't want him here. He's not good for the culture. He doesn't deserve to be here. Damn it, his career needs to be over. So we got to draw a line. Where do you grant somebody a second chance, Mike? And when do you look past issues off the ice or off the field, and you should now let them get on with their lives?
It's a sad statement on our society, but you give them a second chance when there is no video. Ray Rice was going to play for the Baltimore Ravens with his coach and the organization knowing full well, and some of which may have seen that videotape of him knocking his fiance out at the time cold in an elevator in Atlantic City, knocking her out cold. Until that video developed, Ray Rice was going on about business. Roger Goodell was trying to play marriage counselor, doing something that no defender, no domestic abuse counselor or anybody in the mental health industry says should happen when a victim and the who's the person, the perpetrator, you never have them, irrespective of whether they're trying to work on their relationship. If they're still going through the court proceedings, you don't have them together in a room and they make up to each other, which is what Goodell did. And he wanted to put this whole thing behind them, and the NFL got behind it until the video came out.
Well, he was
if a video came out of Milan,
chance. I mean, let's look at this. He was trying to save the guy's career. He was trying to give him a second chance. But on the other side, there will be people on that side who will say, wait a minute, he beat his wife. You don't give him a second chance. That's it.
But I'm saying it's one thing. You and I are speaking about physical violence against a domestic partner, irrespective whether it worked out or not. This is what happened. I don't. Was he charged? Was he convicted, or
No,
did she drop the charges?
he was not convicted. He was arrested. He was charged.
So,
And when the
so
case
that's so.
came to court, his wife refused to testify against him. They are still together.
So
They claim they're trying to work things out.
So I don't legally. How do you hold? So morally, yeah, I'm sickened by it. I don't want to see him on my team, but legally, how do you say to him? I don't know how old Milan is now. He's got to be in his late 30s.
Got to be in his late 30s.
But
I think he's 36 or
yeah,
37.
late 30s. And he's probably, and hockey players, some play till over 40 now, but he's got a few years left of earning power. How do you take away his earning power in the finite number of years that an athlete has to make that kind of money, if he wasn't convicted in a court of law on that? The only way you do it is public perception, Ed. And if
Well,
they and if there were a video that came out today of him beating his wife, he would not play in the NHL, because Gary Bettman would say this is so sickening, and we're going to be the league that looks at as giving a second chance to people who beat their wives. But if the video's not out, and there was no trial, and it never went to trial, and he doesn't have a stain against his criminal record. There's no criminal record of this.
right,
What do
right.
you
But
do?
why should it
What do
make a
you do?
difference, though? And I hear your point loud and clear about there being video, but why should that make a difference? If something
It shouldn't.
happens,
But
if
that's the
there's a
society we
moment,
live in.
and I tell you, we'll get hammered by people on this who will say that all we're doing is here we're making excuses for a wife beater, which we're not doing here. But the
No, I
question
don't.
is,
I don't want to see him work again. I just don't see
no.
legally how you can't.
Well, but see, I guess I fall on the other side. Oh, gosh,
Why?
this
Like
this is
what? Like
this is a tough thing to
I
talk
think
about
there's.
because
I think.
I abhor any level of violence against women, children. I think it's disgusting. I think it's despicable. I think the people who do it should be held accountable for the rest of their lives, because you just don't hit a woman. Period. End of story in any circumstance. But we don't know what happened, so there's a part of me that says we
Well,
can't just take his career away. And on that side, it's one of those. It's a vexing issue where you just don't know what's right and what is wrong.
well, look. We all have unions representing us, and if we work for a major corporation, usually there's an NHL players union. They would be fighting this tooth and nail if they tried to blackball him from the league right now. And they would have every right to, because he hadn't been convicted in court of law. There's also the notion of, if you have a special business, and your special business has rules like a moral turpitude clause, which every NHL contract does, then if you're Gary Bettman and there's enough public outcry, you use that moral turpitude clause against the player, and you say, you broke the code. You broke our. Yeah, I know we don't really. There's also a code where you get to beat up players on the ice, but you don't get to beat up your spouse off of it, and therefore we need to not have you in our league anymore.
But
But
again,
again,
it
it's
goes right back to this circle that we're in here right now. It
what.
goes
But
back
like
to I wasn't convicted. My wife didn't testify against me. We're still together. We're trying to work it out. So how do you
I
keep
mean,
him, how
okay,
do you keep him out of a job?
like give him a second chance, but give him a second chance, but
With a
but
short rope.
whatever shame is going to come his way, he deserves all of it. Whatever cat calls from the visiting teams, he deserves all of it, and he has to put up with it because of his actions. And I don't. When you say we don't know what happened, I mean, I'd have to see photos and the police report themselves to actually corroborate the charge originally. But let's be honest, I don't think Milan Lucic's wife beat him up. Let's
No,
just say that.
no. There's
Okay.
never been any indication of that
So
whatsoever.
so so
He's
so
a physical guy, plays in a physical game.
so we could
Obviously, he lost
so
his
I
temper
I
and he
can
hit his wife.
envision him.
Wrong.
I can envision him standing over his wife in a threatening manner, which is enough. Well, like I said, if I was a league commissioner and I had any video proof of that in a public setting, Milan Lucic would not be on the ice anymore. That's how society reacts now. It's so sad. It's what it is. If there were, Ed, tomorrow, if we had 10,000 views on this video and somebody thought it was interesting, they would go ahead and sign up as a sponsor. If we had 10,000 people say, get these guys even off the air, this is awful what they're doing, and there was enough of a corporate outcry, what we said would be fine, but how people reacted would force someone's hand, and all of a sudden we'd be off YouTube. This is our society now. We don't go on our own gut instincts. We don't go about the right and wrong our parents taught us growing up. We go about what perception tells us to do. And that's the pathetic thing about all of this.
Well, it goes back to, and again, you can connect the two of them. Urban Meyer at Florida, where he basically ran
Yes.
a reckless program, yet he won 2 national championships. So people there want to honor him. Milan Lucic spent a long career in the National Hockey League, won a Stanley Cup for the Boston Bruins, but now he's trying to come back. But people will say, no, the only thing we're going to remember is that you beat your wife. There's no sameness here, Mike. There doesn't seem to be any real rule. It's just where it hits you. And now the St. Louis Blues are going to have him on the ice, and they're going to have to deal with the backlash. And I get a feeling that I don't think he's going to make it, because the organization is going to have to say, we can't put up with this, because that's all people remember is the bad side.
Yeah, well, that I get that. And I also believe that like I said, same thing with Urban Meyer, all these guys. You'd be surprised how far saying sorry and making amends and showing that you're sorry means to you in society. No one will, to this day, give Michael Vick a second chance in their minds. I know
I
you
won't.
won't because you're a
Nope.
dog lover, but this guy has spent considerable time going into schools and talking to kids about how wrong what he did. He has worked with the national SPCA. He is like, this is a guy who has committed his part of his life post going to jail for running a dog fighting ring to ensuring people know that's not how you treat dogs. He'll never get credit for that. But the fact that he's doing it for his own conscience and like makes me think that Michael Vick, while it's going to be in the first line of his obituary that he went to prison for 19 months for running a dogfighting ring, is also a guy who forced himself to change and
But
forced
is he?
himself to admit
But
that he
wait a
did
minute.
was
Hang on
wrong.
a
A
second.
lot of people won't do that. If Milan Lucic came out in front of a camera tomorrow and said, yeah, I did. I got in a physical altercation with my wife. It's the worst thing I ever did in our marriage. And I've spent not just time with her in counseling about it, but I've talked to other NHL players about the need to restrain ourselves when we get off the ice. The idea that domestic violence is so wrong and can destroy families, can destroy relationships, and I have to let people know that. I'll tell you what, I would welcome Milan Lucic back because he made amends. There's only a
Well, but
few
see,
things
that's
to
just
me
it.
that you
I got
can't
to go
come.
back to
There's a
Michael Vick
few
here
things that
before
you
this
can't.
gets too far.
There's a few things
Because
that you can't come back from, Ed. To
is
me,
Michael Vick
child
doing
sexual abuse and
right? I
murder.
get that.
That's it for me.
But is Michael Vick doing this? And I got to go back to Vick again, because that opens up another whole can of worms here. Does Michael Vick do all these things out of his conscience, because he wants to clean himself, because he wants to be better? Or is he doing it because he has to market himself to make a buck, and he knows this is the only way that he's going to get out there, is if he comes out? Michael Vick has never really come out and said, I did wrong, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it. He has always kind of soft pedaled this whole thing about what he did. He's never really
Let
come
me
clean on
let
what
me.
he's done.
We should before we before you say that with conviction, we should research that because I have seen some pretty what I'd call revelational quotes from him where I thought, oh wow, he does get it. Maybe, but I guess to your point though, I said that in my book, there's only two things you don't come back from: child sexual abuse and murder, and
I would
and
agree.
premeditated murder, not manslaughter. You got caught in the passion of the moment, whatever, because something happened. I I believe that you can come back from a lot of things, but I think there has to be a redemptive process. Lance Armstrong, the stupidest thing he ever did was live the big lie for how many ever years until he finally had no other choice,
Yeah, there's
and then
no
he became a
redemption for a guy
pariah.
like Lance Armstrong.
People didn't even
Continue to lie
care that
over and
Lance
over again. Yeah.
Armstrong said he. People didn't even care that Lance Armstrong said he used because they all knew it for years.
And he just continued to deny it constantly. So, yeah, there's no coming back from that. But the simple
Yeah.
question then is, does a guy like Milan Lucic, with what is in his past, and we know, does he deserve a second chance? I say yes.
I say legally yes, morally until I hear an apology or the fact that he has taken domestic violence seriously. He just wants to put this behind him in some way that people don't remember it. I say no. Morally, no. Legally, yes.
That's all, folks.